Once upon a time, in the city of Lagos, there lived a couple named David and Linda. They had been married for 8 wonderful years and were blessed with two lovely children, Daniel and Grace. David was a civil engineer who worked for a construction company, while Linda, his wife, ran a small tailoring business from home. Life in their home was peaceful, joyful, and full of love. People often said they were the perfect family. David truly loved his wife. No matter how busy his day was, he always made time to check on her and the children. Every evening, he helped Linda in the kitchen or with the children's schoolwork. Sometimes he would come home with Linda's favorite food or flowers just to see her smile. Linda felt safe and happy with him. She always thanked God for giving her a good man. Their children were their joy. Daniel, the older one, loved reading, while Grace enjoyed playing keyboard. The family often had dinner together, prayed before bedtime, and spent weekends watching movies or going to the beach. Neighbors admired how close they were. David and Linda didn't have much, but their home was full of peace, laughter, and unity. David wasn't just a husband, he was Linda's best friend. He listened to her whenever she needed to talk and supported all her dreams. Even when Linda struggled with her tailoring business in the early days, David encouraged her and helped her get customers. He always reminded her that they were a team and she didn't have to face life alone. His kindness made their love grow stronger every day. Every Sunday evening, David would take the family out to eat or buy something sweet for the kids. He was proud of his children and always told them he loved them. Linda often watched him play with Grace and Daniel, and her heart would swell with joy. To her, she was the luckiest woman alive. People in their neighborhood noticed how David treated his family. Some men even came to him for advice on how to take care of their homes. But David never boasted. He simply said, "Just love your wife." Linda often joked that she didn't know what she did to deserve him. She told her friends that if she had to marry again, she would still choose David. David and Linda had known each other since their university days. Their love grew from friendship. Even when they had nothing, they held each other close and believed things would get better. And they did. Over the years, they moved from a small one-room apartment to a two-bedroom flat in a quiet area. They built everything together. They didn't have a perfect life, but they always faced challenges as one. There were days when there was no money and things were tight, or the children fell sick, or work got too stressful. But they never let these things break them. Their home was full of warmth. Everywhere David and Linda went, people admired them. In church, they sat together with their kids, looking like a picture-perfect family. At school events, they showed up holding hands, cheering for Daniel and Grace. Their people often spoke about how polite and well-behaved their children were. Even older couples admired how David opened the car door for Linda and always held her hand like they had just started dating. Linda's business also started growing. She had more customers. David supported her by helping her create a small space in the house where she could work. He told her he believed in her talent and was proud of the strong woman she was becoming. Linda's joy was full. She was doing what she loved with the man she loved in a home that felt like heaven. Linda had a best friend named Kemi. They had been friends since their university days in University of Ibadan. They shared everything back then, from clothes, secrets, even food. Even after school, they remained close. Kemi was hardworking and smart. She built a big name for herself in the world of business and lived in a high-rise apartment in Victoria Island. She had money, connections, and a life many dreamed of. Kemi visited Linda often, especially on weekends. She would bring toys for the kids and snacks for the whole family. The children called her Auntie Kemi and always ran to hug her whenever she came around. David treated her with respect and always made her feel welcome. Kemi smiled and laughed a lot when she visited. The children loved her so much, they called her their best auntie and was always looking forward to her visit. Linda always made her feel at home. She would serve her food, gist with her for hours, and sometimes even share small family matters with her. Kemi often said, "I love how peaceful your home is. You're so lucky, Linda." And Linda would laugh and reply, "God has been good to me." But each time Kemi heard those words, a tiny part of her heart felt heavy. She smiled, but deep down, she wished she had what Linda had. Kemi was happy for the life her friend had. But each time she left Linda's house, she would look around her empty apartment and suddenly feel cold. No children running to hug her, no husband waiting to hear how her day went, no warm meal waiting in the kitchen. Just silence. At work, Kemi was successful. She had staff, cars, and money, but none of it gave her the kind of joy she saw on Linda's face. She remembered how they used to dream together back in school. They both wanted love, family, and success, but only Linda had it all. Kemi had worked hard, but life hadn't given her that one thing she truly wanted, her own family. She began to avoid Linda's calls sometimes, not because she was angry, but because hearing her friend's voice reminded her of what she didn't have. Still, she visited now and then, laughed with the children, and played with them. But something changed. She no longer just admired Linda's life. She had started to feel jealous of it. One Saturday morning, Linda and the kids were in the kitchen baking banana bread. Daniel mixed the flour while Grace stood on a stool, cracking eggs carefully. David walked in, smiled, and kissed Linda on the cheek. "This house smells like heaven," he joked. Moments like that were normal in their home. They didn't need expensive things to be happy. Their joy came from being together. Kemi became more distant as weeks passed. She no longer called or visited like before. Linda noticed and tried reaching out. "Are you okay?" she texted one night. Kemi replied, "I am just busy lately." But the truth was, she was tired of pretending. She was tired of hearing her friend brag about how perfect her life is. Kemi began to question everything. "Why me?" she often said while alone. "I have money. I have everything. But why can't I have what Linda has? Why can't love find me?" It wasn't just about being married. It was about the kind of love David showered Linda. It was about her children who called her mummy and kissed her goodnight. About a house full of laughter. Kemi had none of that, and she hated the way it made her feel. One afternoon, she sat in her office staring at her phone screen. Linda had posted a picture of her and David holding hands, with the caption, "Forever my best friend." Kemi laughed bitterly. That was the moment she stopped seeing Linda as her best friend and started seeing her as a woman who had everything she didn't. Back at home, life continued normally for David and Linda. They were planning for the long school break. David suggested a short family trip to Ibadan, where they could relax and spend time with Linda's parents. The kids were excited and Linda began packing. They had no idea a storm was slowly forming around their happiness. One evening, David came home earlier than usual with ice cream for everyone. "Just because," he said, laughing. They sat around the dining table, sharing stories and laughter. Grace told a joke that made everyone burst into laughter. Meanwhile, Kemi was staring at a picture she had of David, Linda, and their children at the park. She stared at it for minutes. Then she slowly tore off Linda's face from the picture and placed it beside her mirror. "This could have been my life," she said. Her jealousy had turned into bitterness. David and Linda were busy preparing for their trip. The children were excited, talking about what they will do when they get to Ibadan. David had made arrangements for a beautiful guest house where they could spend quality time away from their usual routine. Linda couldn't wait to take a break from work and enjoy a few days of relaxation with her family. It was just what they needed. Linda had already called Kemi to share the exciting news about their upcoming family vacation. She eagerly told her about the beautiful hotel her husband had booked for them. Kemi sounded genuinely happy for them as she spoke on the phone. But as soon as she ended the call, a wave of bitterness washed over her heart. Kemi, however, couldn't shake the thoughts that plagued her mind. She saw that Linda posted about their upcoming trip. The perfect family, living the perfect life. Kemi sat in her apartment, surrounded by expensive things, but none of it brought her happiness. "I'm always second best," she thought bitterly. "They have it all." The more she thought about it, the more the seed of resentment grew. The thought of kidnapping Linda's son suddenly consumed Kemi's mind. A determination took hold of her as she said to herself, "I'll make her cry, no matter what." If she couldn't have the life she wanted, then perhaps Linda didn't deserve it either. "Maybe it's time to change things," she whispered to herself. It was the night before Linda's family trip to Ibadan. The house was packed, and everything was ready for the next day's journey. Linda was tired, but happy. She had tucked Daniel and Grace into bed, kissed them good night, and then joined David in the living room. They sat together, chatting and laughing about the things they would do during their short vacation. That evening, Kemi called Linda. "How are you? You guys are going on your vacation tomorrow." Kemi's voice was calm, almost friendly. "Yes, it is," Linda replied. "It's going to be so much fun." Kemi smiled to herself. "Good," she said. "I'll miss you, but enjoy yourself." They said their goodbyes, and Linda went to bed, unaware of what her friend was planning. The next morning, as the family left for the bus station, Kemi quietly followed them from a distance. Everything was set. She knew exactly when and where to strike. It wasn't just a random decision. It had been carefully planned. "It will work," she thought as she watched them leave. "They will never know it was me." Linda and David were enjoying their time in Ibadan with their children. They toured the city's beautiful sights, took photos by historical landmarks, and ate delicious local food. The kids were especially excited to visit the zoo, where Grace fed a giraffe for the first time. Daniel was thrilled by the monkeys swinging from tree to tree. The day was filled with laughter. That evening, after a long day of exploring, the family returned to their guest house. The children quickly settled in, eager to unpack their little bags and talk about their favorite parts of the trip. David and Linda relaxed in the living room, sharing a quiet moment, appreciating the peace of the day. The house was warm and full of life, just the way they liked it. The next morning, Linda woke up early, excited to start another day of adventure. She went to check on the children, but when she opened the door to Daniel's room, a chill ran down her spine. The bed was empty. Her heart skipped a beat. "Daniel," she called softly, but there was no response. She rushed to Grace's room, hoping it was just a mistake. Grace was still asleep, hugging her doll tightly, but Daniel was nowhere to be found. David woke up to Linda's frantic voice calling his name. He rushed into the children's room, his mind racing. "Where is Daniel?" Linda asked, barely able to hold back her tears. They searched the house, the yard, and even the surrounding area, but there was no sign of him. The night guard had seen nothing, and no one had heard any strange sounds or seen anyone suspicious. Linda and David's hearts were heavy with fear. Their son was missing, and they had no idea who could have taken him. The police were called, but the investigation didn't go as quickly as Linda and David hoped. "We'll need to follow proper procedures," the officer explained, though his words did little to comfort them. They couldn't understand how their perfect family vacation had turned into this nightmare. She held on to David tightly, whispering, "Please, let's find him." But deep inside, she feared they might not. Kemi had been keeping a close eye on Linda's family. She had followed them to Ibadan, ensuring she stayed far enough behind so no one would notice her. It had been easy to slip into the background. She had always been good at blending in. But this time, she watched with a heavy heart as Linda and David laughed and joked with their children. When Daniel went missing, Kemi knew that the moment had come. It was exactly what she had planned, though it filled her with an uneasy sense of triumph. "This will teach her," Kemi whispered to herself. As the days passed, Linda and David grew more desperate. They had contacted every possible person, from family members to their closest friends, but no one had seen or heard from Daniel. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. The police were doing their best, but Linda couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't doing enough. She began to question every little thing. Had she missed a sign, a hint that something was wrong? The couple went over everything again. The children had been fine the night before, laughing and playing as usual. They had even talked about their plans for the next day. It didn't make sense. How could Daniel just disappear without a trace? Every night, Linda would lie awake beside David, her thoughts spiraling, while he tried to comfort her. "We'll find him, Linda. We will," he would say, though even he wasn't sure anymore. In the quiet of the night, Linda couldn't help but feel like she had failed as a mother. Where did I go wrong, she wondered, feeling a deep ache in her chest. She had always tried to protect her family, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. And little did she know, the person behind it all was someone she trusted completely. Days turned into weeks, and Linda and David's hope of finding Daniel began to dwindle. The police had no new leads, and every day felt like a lifetime. Linda spent hours thinking, replaying every moment of their vacation, trying to figure out if she had missed something. One evening, as they sat quietly in the living room, there was a knock at the door. It was a police officer, and he had news. "Mrs. Linda, Mr. David, we found something," the officer said, his tone serious. Linda's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" she asked urgently. The officer explained that they had tracked a series of calls made to a phone number, connected to someone who had been nearby the guest house during the time of Daniel's disappearance. The number led to someone with a connection to Linda's life, someone she had trusted completely. "Who?" Linda asked, her voice trembling. The officer hesitated for a moment before replying, "Your friend, Kemi." Linda and David looked at each other in shock. How could Kemi be involved? They couldn't believe it. The next morning, Linda and David sat in disbelief as they met with the police. Kemi's connection to the disappearance of their son was slowly becoming clearer. She had been in Ibadan the entire time, and her movements had been tracked around the guest house during the time Daniel went missing. It was like the world had turned upside down. Kemi had been hiding in plain sight. The police had been able to track down Kemi's location, and they were preparing to confront her. "She's been pretending to be your friend all along," the officer said, shaking his head. Linda was silent, struggling to comprehend the betrayal. Kemi had been in their lives for so long, always supportive and caring. The idea that she was behind their son's disappearance was too much to bear. Later that day, Kemi was arrested. When Linda saw her in the police station, she was speechless. Kemi's once familiar face was now twisted with guilt and shame. Kemi couldn't look Linda in the eye. "Why, Kemi?" Linda said, her voice breaking. Kemi finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't stand it anymore. You had everything. The perfect family. I wanted that for myself." Kemi sat across from Linda and David in the interrogation room, her hands shaking. The police had given her the chance to speak, and she finally admitted everything. She confessed to taking Daniel, explaining how jealousy had consumed her over the years. "I tried to be happy for you, Linda. I really did," Kemi said, tears streaming down her face. "But the more I saw your perfect family, the more I felt like I was missing out. I wanted what you had, and I thought if I took him, I could make you feel the pain I felt." Linda stared at her, her heart heavy with disbelief. "But why our son, Kemi? Why him?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Kemi lowered her head in shame. "I thought if I took him, you'd understand how much pain I was in. I didn't think it would go this far. I was wrong." David couldn't hold back his anger anymore. "You took our son and shattered our lives. What did you expect to happen?" His words were sharp, but Kemi remained silent, knowing she could never undo what she had done. After Kemi's confession, Daniel was found safe, though shaken. The relief Linda and David felt upon hearing the news was overwhelming. They rushed to the police station to bring their son back home. When they finally held Daniel in their arms, tears of joy mixed with the sorrow of everything they had gone through. He was safe, but the scars from the ordeal would take time to heal. Life slowly began to return to normal for Linda and David. They took extra care in explaining the events to Daniel, reassuring him that he was safe and loved. But as much as they tried to move on, the betrayal from Kemi lingered in their minds. Linda had lost a friend, and while she was grateful for her son's return, she couldn't erase the hurt Kemi had caused. As the weeks passed, Linda and David found themselves growing closer as a family. The traumatic event had tested their relationship, but it had also reinforced their bond. They made a promise to each other that they would always protect their family, no matter the cost. They spent more time together, making new memories and cherishing every moment. Kemi, on the other hand, faced the consequences of her actions. She was charged for kidnapping, and her reputation was forever damaged. Her once successful life crumbled, and she was left alone to face the reality of what she had done. It was a painful reminder that jealousy could destroy everything, even the most meaningful friendships. Linda and David decided to move forward with a renewed appreciation for their love and their children. They understood that nothing in life was guaranteed, but as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.